Hello everybody, my name is Mike Geig, and in this video we are going to look at making tile backgrounds in Allegro 5 with a piece of software called Mappy. In the previous video we created a tile-based background in code using an integer array to dictate which tiles were in which location and then manually drawing them to the screen. And that works, just very well. We saw that. It drew clean, we were able to cycle through it and scroll and all that stuff. But the problem with a system like that is if you want a very large background, in the order of magnitude of 1,000 tiles or so, the integer array to make or to run that gets a little bit cumbersome. It becomes more difficult to maintain, it becomes difficult to write out and everything. So we can use a piece of software called Mappy to allow us to both create these maps and then to import the Mappy headers into our program and to draw the maps very easily. And what we're going to see is how we can have a large tiled background with the Mappy software, but that's really just scratching the surface of what Mappy can do. Mappy can do built-in parallax scrolling, isometric camera views, hex tiles as opposed to necessarily square tiles. I mean, there's a lot of really neat things you can do with Mappy that we're not necessarily going to cover in these videos, but I want to make sure you guys are aware of it. It's an excellent piece of software for creating your backgrounds. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail about using the Mappy piece of software, but I'll give you a brief look at it right here. This is the Mappy piece of software. You can go on to the website and get it. Now, I do want to stress one very important fact, and that is that the Mappy software, the plugin for Allegro 5, is not on their website. Alright? For whatever reason, the software is only available on the Allegro forums. To make things easier for you guys, I'm just going to include it on my website here. So just at the bottom of this page, look for the Mappy libraries, because it was very difficult to find, and so I'll save you all the stress. But this here is Mappy software, and just to give you an idea, if I were to hit new map here, it would say, hey, how big is each tile? And just to use the example I created before with those two tiles, the grass and the stones from the previous, they're all each 128, so I'm going to put 128 in here. And this allows me to make a map, and let's say 100 by 100. I'm going to hit OK, and we get this little screen here, and now the software's here. I can do File, Import, and when I import, I can import, here's my background, I can import basically any tile map or any tile sheet that I have. Since I specified 128 by 128, it automatically figures out from that still image what my tiles are. Another great point here real quick is my background image with the grass and the tile, my tile sheet here, that is a PNG. Mappy won't by default work with PNGs. You have to go to their website. Right there at the top it says if you want to work with PNGs, click here, and you click there and it gives you two PNG DLLs. Or you take those two files, you put them in the folder with Mappy, everything works great. Since that is hosted on their website, I will not put it on my website, only because I'm trying to not share copyrighted materials. So if you want that, you'll just go to the Mappy website and go ahead and grab that. So I can select either tile here, so I'm just going to take some grass and I can just draw my grass. And I can take stone and draw stone, and I can zoom out. Let me see, I'll zoom out really far. I can select grass and then just highlight over the black and do Control F to fill the whole thing. It's going to look a little weird, that's fine. It won't actually end up looking like that. You can see it once I click away, it starts being a normal color. And so we can just do things like that. When I'm done, I can do just save, and it'll pop up and allow me to save it. And it saves it in this format called a .fmp, and that's a very useful file. In the previous example, you saw that we had this array of integers, which was the actual layout of the map, and then we had our tile sheet, which we also loaded in. So we had these two different things to keep track of. Well, the FMP has the map data and the map images built into it. So once I've created my FMP, I don't need that tile sheet anymore. right? I can keep it in another folder, or I can not include it with my project, whatever, because all that graphical information is built into the FMP. I'm not going to go through the steps of actually making this and saving it, because I've already done that, but I just wanted to point that out. So basically that is the Mappy software for editing, and we can look now at using it. So in order to utilize the functionality of Mappy within Allegro, because there's the Mappy software, which we use to make the maps, which we just looked at, and then there's the Mappy, functionality, program functionality, the header file and stuff like that. We have to include it. So I've already put the .h and the .c file in my project folder. That's the stuff I'm going to make available to you guys, so you can download. But I'm just going to right-click header files. I'm going to do add. I'm going to do existing item, and I'm going to look for Mappy _ a5.c and Mappy _ a5.h. I'll add those. The A5 stands for Allegro 5. I'll move the C down to sources, files, just to keep everything neat. Very important to not rename this C to a .cpp. This is a C-based file, not a C++ based file. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so with those files included, with my FMP made and in the right directory, I am ready to begin working. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to include the Mappy A5 header. Alright, great. And you're going to notice here real quick that working with these tile backgrounds in Mappy is super easy. And I can't stress enough that there's so much more power to this than what we're going to look at here. I'm just kind of giving you a push in the right direction as far as using that. So we have we've included our Mappy _ A5, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down underneath my initialized primitives, right under all my add-on inits, and I'm going to simply say if map load, and I'm going to pass in, I'm going to say my map.fmp and 1. I'll explain that in a second. Return -5. Okay, so one thing I learned is that for whatever reason, I'm not entirely certain, map load, if it succeeds, it returns false, and if it fails, it returns true. I'm not sure why. That would seem counterintuitive, but the folks who develop Mappy have decided that if loading the map succeeds, it's going to return false. So we're going to say if map load, so if we get a true out of here, obviously that means the map didn't load, and I'm returning with -5. The only reason I'm returning with -5 is so that if I see here down at the bottom has exited with code -5, I know my Mappy failed, and then I don't have to have pop-ups and stuff like that. Just keeps things neat, in my opinion, while we're in testing and stuff like that. Sure, you'd want a more robust messaging system, in a bigger project, but for this works just fine. So I'm loading my map.fmp, that's that file format we talked about, and then we just have 1, and 1 basically is denoting the transparency color, and by setting that equal to 1 or true, we're just basically saying, use your default, whatever is built in, use that, and then it just works. So this loads our map, alright, and then we can go ahead, and I'll just scroll down here. I'm going to write the code that'll help us move it around. I'm going to say x offset plus equals key subwrite times 10. I'm doing 10 on this one because the map is huge. It's a 200 by 200 map that I created earlier. So obviously we want to be able to move through this pretty darn fast. And so I'm just going to copy this, paste it 3 more times, change this to Y, change that to Y, change that to minus, change that to minus, change that to left, change this to down, change this to up. Okay, so that updates our X offsets and our Y offsets. We saw that in the previous video, nothing really new there. Now I'm going to come down here to my drawing, and this is where before we had that for loop which drew each tile where it went and things like that. So for us, I'm simply going to do map draw bg, that's a built-in Mappy function, and I'm going to pass in X offset, Y offset, or X off, Y off, its position on the screen. So 0, 0, we want to draw on the upper left hand corner of the screen, and then the width and the height. And width is the width of my screen, and height is the height of my screen. Just like that. That's it. Notice we don't have to tell it what background to draw. It knows. And Mappy has the capability of having backgrounds and multiple foregrounds. I believe it allows 7 foregrounds. So you can do some big parallax scrolling, or you can have bridges over water, or you can treat NPCs as tiles, or whatever. It also allows for animated tiles, so tiles that actually draw themselves. So you could actually theoretically move tiles around as NPCs or as characters or whatever. If you're thinking like a traditional Japanese RPG, the blocky style avatars moving around animated, you could absolutely use Mappy to do that. There's no reason you couldn't. You can also do collision and parallax and ISO. I had mentioned all that stuff before, but I can't stress enough there's just a lot of cool stuff you can do here. Finally, like anything else, we need to clear up the memory that we use to prevent any memory memory leaks. So I'm just going to do map free mem, so free the memory there. Okay. So using this, alright, so we saw that we have basically, we'll call this one line of code because I could have condensed this. We'll say 1, 2, 3 lines of code. We have our map drawn on the screen successfully. And I'll run it here. And we see we've got my map. And if I walk around, we can see, and it's a big map, so it actually would take me a long time to walk to the other end of it. By a long time, I mean like maybe a minute or so. Now, here's something different about using Mappy that wasn't the case in our previous example with our manual tile backgrounds. In our manual tile backgrounds, we could go off screen. All right, so we could say move past the 0, 0, and the system wouldn't crash or anything. It would just have that black border. All right, hopefully you remember that. Now with Mappy, that's not the case. With Mappy, you can see that black border means I'm off my screen now. If I keep going, I will crash my system, and I just did. I crashed the program. Not my whole system. I just crashed the program. Mappy will not allow you basically to do that safely. Okay, so you have to take care to do proper bounds checking if you're using Mappy. So that's what I'm going to do right here. I'm coming back up here to my update section, and I'm going to do the proper bounds checking here to prevent that error from happening anymore. So I'm going to do if x off is less than 0, then x off equals 0. If y off is less than 0, y off equals 0. And then the next, for how big it is, Mappy actually gives us some nice built-in capabilities. So I'm going to say if x off is greater than map width. Map width is something built into Mappy times map block width. Okay, that figures out how wide our map is minus the width of the screen. Okay, so if our x offset is bigger than the width of the whole map minus the width of the screen, then we're going to say, I'm actually just going to copy this, and I believe I have myself an extra parenthesis here. I'm simply going to say x offset is going to equal, and I'll paste that there. Likewise, if y off is greater than map height times map block height minus height, if that is the case, copy that. Ooh, that's not good. There we go. Then y off is going to equal, bam. Okay, so basically we're using these two built-in capabilities here. I didn't declare these anywhere. This is in Mappy. We're using those to go ahead and bounds check. So you can see now I can't go outside of the bounds. Now I'd show you that I can't go outside of the bounds on the other side, but like I said, it would take a while to get to the end. It's pretty big. So I don't feel like doing them. Well, I guess I could do the math in my head, but 128 times 200. So we're looking at what? 25,600. Oh, please let that be right. All I need is to get ridiculed. Okay, anyway, so so basically that's it. Yeah, we have a tile-based background that we drew fairly simple. You can see I just sort of scribbled. I didn't really put a lot of effort in there. Also wanted to show you I'm making the screen much bigger here so that I can show off more of these tiles. But yeah, so Mappy made it real simple. I just sort of doodled my background. You could spend more time and make a really good looking background. There's also a bunch of demos and stuff like that that are inside Mappy that you can try out. So it was real simple to make this background. The background is huge. It's 200 by 200. So it's very, very large. Took very little effort. There's no array I have to maintain. I don't have to maintain any image files. I just need that one .fmp. So if I wanted to cycle through multiple levels, I could just load a separate FMP. And all in all, it becomes fairly simple to do. So so yeah, basically, if you're doing a very simple game, a very small game, the overhead of the Mappy library is probably not worth it. It's probably easier just to use an array or even something simpler than that. However, if you want something larger, easier to maintain, then Mappy is a pretty good way to go. That's going to conclude my videos for Chapter 11. Stand by for some more stuff.